The grief of this journey takes so much from you. Whether you've been through endless cycles of trying to conceive, rounds of IVF that haven't been successful, or experienced the devastation of pregnancy loss, what we go through on this journey stays with you. And as we're going to discuss today, the grief also stays deep within your body. We often think that getting that positive pregnancy test or finally holding our baby in our arms will solve everything. But as today's guest is going to show us, healing is going to take far more than this.
Welcome to your journey to fertility. This is the podcast that blends science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so that you can stop stressing that you'll never have your baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your time with me today. The guest that we have coming up is someone who I have wanted to have on the podcast for a very long time, and we have finally made it happen today. She's come up from another city to join me here in Sydney. Now, you may know Priyanka Saha as the Lily Flower, which is her online presence, and this is dedicated to speaking about her experience with infant loss, pregnancy loss, and living life throughout these experiences. Priyanka lost her daughter Lily when she was 10 months old to a rare brain condition. For years, she walked through the valleys of grief and trauma in every part of her life. Through this journey, she discovered something profound. Healing isn't just in the mind, it's in the body. Her experiences led her to find the power of somatic healing, breathwork, and nervous system regulation, releasing the trapped emotions that had kept her stuck in survival mode, guilt, blame, and shame for so many years. Priyanka is now a trauma-informed breathwork practitioner, a somatic mind-body healing teacher, and an NLP practitioner as well. She is on a mission to bring these practices and practical tools to you so that you can experience deep embodied healing. So whether you are carrying grief, loss, or the trauma and the pain that feels too heavy to bear, then this conversation is going to be for you. Priyanka, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. And it's awesome to do this in person.
Yeah.
It's just, another level of intimacy with that conversation when we get to do this face to face. So I think excited is probably not the right word to say when I want to introduce you and get you to talk about your story.
I'm always excited to be here to talk. I'm always excited to meet the lovely people that I've spoken with for years in real life, and any excuse for me to share Lily is exciting. So that exciting works.
That's it. And I think that it is only through our stories and the things that we share that we can allow other people to really feel heard and seen and let them experience true healing as well.
Yeah.
So would you like to start by sharing your story of Lily and what brings us together here today?
Yeah, absolutely. So what a big journey. It's been nearly 10 years. So Lily would be 9 years old. She was born in 2016. And she was our rainbow baby. So prior to that, I'd had a ruptured ectopic pregnancy, which was very, very traumatic. But it was my first experience of entering into the world of trying to have babies. And I had that naivety before that this would be easy and all the things that might happen to other people would never happen to me. So I got this massive dose of life hitting me that not only I thought the ruptured ectopic pregnancy would be it. I was like, okay, that was really, really traumatic and really upsetting. But back then I didn't share it with anybody. You know, my immediate friends knew. I made up an excuse to work about what had happened, and it was a total taboo. Then we went on to have this normal, healthy pregnancy until with Lily, and I was excited, and I was like, this is the redemption. You know, we've been through this terrible time, and that was the worst thing that's going to happen to me, because I still had this bias about my life. And so at 36 weeks pregnant, I was pretty certain that I was going to be like a Pilates lycra, like I was going to have my coffee and jump into my SUV and my baby would have a nanny, and I was going to go back to work after 3 months, and I was working as a lawyer and flying around this country, and I just had this image and I was a little bit smug, I think, too, about how great everything was. And then the whole world fell apart. We went to the 36-week scan, which was a routine sizing scan. There was no indication up until that point that anything was wrong. And, if I'm really honest about it, my body knew something was wrong before the words were spoken, because the silence whilst she was doing this scanning, it just stretched for that second too long. And I remember breaking out into a sweat. It was like I knew something was coming. And then she said, "I'm so sorry, I can't see the brain development that I would expect to see." And it's kind of was the beginning of the end. So everything changed from that point, and we went on to learn that our beautiful baby, who had every of the usual normal routine tests, had a severe and catastrophically life-limiting disorder and probably wouldn't live for more than 2 years. And as it was, Lily lived for 10 months, and in her 10 months, we made a decision that we wanted her life to be as least medicalised as it safely and comfortably could be. And so she did a lot in 10 months. She had her first swim in Noosa. She hung out in Bondi. She went to New Zealand and visited the wineries, did a lot of hiking in Tassie, and died peacefully in our arms at home after only going to hospital for a day. And it was really hard, obviously really hard to do. And we're also really proud that we were able to give her that life, if that makes sense. After Lily died, I was in complete fight, flight, freeze and completely disassociated for years. I didn't really know that I was disassociated because I was so disassociated, if that makes sense. And I started sharing about the rawness of grief and, building an online profile. And I thought that I was healing and doing all these perfect grief healing things. And I was seeing the psychologist and doing the yoga and doing the journaling. And I looked like a high-functioning person, but I couldn't actually feel. I couldn't cry when I was meant to cry. Everybody else would cry over something and I was just like a piece of ice. And I couldn't really laugh in the way that I used to laugh, but I loved laughing. So I was frozen. And I also had a new baby that came very quickly after Lily died. We had Jasper, which was wonderful and healing, but I was also quite disassociated as a mother. I looked on again like everything was perfect, but I wasn't feeling. And where was I going with that?
Just sharing your journey.
Yeah. Where was I going with that?
There's so much in that as well, and this idea that we can do all the right things, and it looks like on the outside, you go and you see the counsellors and the psychologists, and you look like you're functioning, but we're never really taught, and I find that psychology for me didn't tell me this either, that being able to feel your emotions is actually a really big part of healing. And
totally.
This idea that we're in this freeze or shut down state where we can just kind of cope with everything but nothing gets in or out. And that's fine because it's a coping mechanism and a trauma response that,
it's a survival technique, right? It's your body keeping you safe. But then it gets to a point where it's no longer a functional thing. And I remember going to the psychologist after Lily had died and treating it like a project. I was like, right, what do I need to do to make sure that I don't end up really fucked up? She was like, what? And I was like, what do we need to do here? What are the steps? What's the project? How do we sort this out? And I remember her laughing at me and being like, you can't, that's not how grief works. There's not, you do project A and project B and project C. And then when you're in your 70s, you don't have all of these issues. This is an individual journey. And I was like, I wanted to turn it into a school project and I wanted to tick the boxes but you can't.
You can't. And as a fellow type A, let's get it done human.
Yeah.
I completely relate to that.
Yeah.
I was like, when I lost a pregnancy, I was like, great, that's done. We're going to move on. We're going to try again. When can this start?
Yeah.
And it was
action mode.
Mode. And that works for a little while.
Yeah, it does. And it can kind of kick that can up the hill a little further or further down the road, whatever the saying is. But eventually I think it all catches up with you.
It does. And being pregnant again after you've experienced, well, not one, but two losses and a catastrophic loss, like what you went through, is unfathomable.
Jasper's pregnancy I was terrified. I found out the day after Lily's funeral that I was pregnant, and we still laugh a bit because we're like, the Immaculate Conception, like how did that happen when we were, parenting a baby that was dying? Like how did we end up? So it was obviously Lily's gift to us.
Oh, with one fallopian tube.
Yeah, wild. Absolutely wild. I had an amazing acupuncturist who's since retired that I was seeing at that time, so I think that helped. But absolutely wild, and also was terrified because, what had happened. I was like, this can't happen again. We knew we weren't genetic carriers, but I now knew that a pregnancy, it wasn't just getting through 12 weeks. Like there was no way of being relaxed until the baby, like it was in my mind, the baby, until the baby is in my arms. And when the baby was born, I said to my obstetrician, like he was clearly born and alive. I was like, is the baby alive or is the baby dead? And she was like, he's alive. He's here. I'm like, hold him. Like I was so disassociated. I had to have like this very clinical birth experience with him because I couldn't believe that I would get to hold a living baby that I could take home. And then because Lily had like genetic condition that meant she wouldn't meet milestones, it wasn't really until Jasper started meeting all the milestones that I was able to go, like, maybe I can buy clothes that are a little bit larger size, because I couldn't even do that. I was like, oh, no, we'll just stick with the size because we can't, if we buy bigger clothes, we're tempting fate. Oh. Like it was, and to where I am today is like a completely different person. When I look back on that time, it was a pretty, dark and harrowing time.
Even to be able to get through retelling your story without breaking down, and I'm in tears listening to it, but for you to be able to recount that and not be completely lost in the emotion is incredible. The healing work you must have
breath
done.
work changed my life.
We have so much to say about that.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you what your experience was around the idea of trying again and being pregnant again after loss, because there's not many. If you think about, it's textbook PTSD, being pregnant again after loss, isn't it?
Yeah, going back, like we don't say to sort of like our war veterans, go back to the scene of your military trauma and relive it for 10 months.
Every single moment of every day.
Which is what we do when we have PTSD. We go back and we live it every single day. It is excruciating.
Yeah.
It is, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. No. And in many respects, being disassociated was the only way that I could survive it. Not particularly healthy, but for me in that time, and then choosing again after having Jasper that we wanted to have another sibling was really hard, and we did put it off for a while. So there's a 4-year age gap, as well as the time of infertility that occurred. So none of my pregnancy journey, I did get there. I want you all to know I got there. It took a long time. I have 2 beautiful, healthy boys, and we have Lily, obviously, who's very present in our life still, even though she's not here in physical form. So I did get there eventually, but it was a very harrowing journey. I wish that I had understood a lot earlier the power that coming back into my body and the healing power of coming back into my body through these different techniques, because I think I probably could have saved myself a lot of heartache and pain and just not being here, if I had learnt it earlier. And I'm so excited when I see people, discover things like breathwork or things like your course that can regulate and bring you back into your body, because I think having those techniques and being able to shed that trauma earlier would have been a completely different journey for me.
I completely agree. And it wasn't until after I had my son, my second child, and it was after, years of IVF and pregnancy loss, and I really naively thought that I had done my healing work.
Yeah, like me. Yeah.
Right? I was like, I've discovered these amazing practices. I've been through it all. I've done the crying on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m. and I've come back from that, and I've got my family, and I'm good. My healing is done.
Yes.
And I couldn't have been more wrong.
Yeah.
And it would show up in the weirdest ways. Like I'd be pushing a pram down the street and looking up at the sky, waiting for something to fall out of the sky and land on my baby.
100%.
And
yeah.
people say these things to me all the time. Like I'm always checking my baby's breathing. And there's a lot of nervous new motherhood that goes into that. But these things aren't normal, and we shouldn't just be expected to carry on with this sense of dread, this waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is too good to be true every day of our lives.
Yeah, and when you've been through infertility or pregnancy loss, that is so heightened because you have actually experienced the rug being pulled from under your feet. And so your sense of, like, if you think back to the person I was, a little bit smug at the beginning that was just going to, have this yummy mummy life, like, that can be shattered in an instant. And so it's quite normal to then suddenly become hypervigilant. But then, as you know, the more hypervigilant we become, the more we lay that kind of neural pathway and we become more and more hypervigilant. So it's the same. Will would go, say, my husband would say, I'm going for a run. And a microsecond in my brain would imagine him going for a run and getting hit by like a garbage truck. And then I'd be like, oh, no, that's not going to happen. But that was just constant intrusive thoughts. And the same, sleep, is my baby breathing? If he slept in, oh, he must be dead. I better go check, I guess. And in that microsecond, we'll have to call like emergency services. We'll have to do this, blah, blah, blah. And then we'll go in and he's having a sleep.
And we can giggle about that because, we are, for lack of a better phrase, on the other side.
Yes.
But it's so real and so visceral.
Yeah.
And it is no way to live. And I remember going to appointments, where there was nothing wrong with my kids and, something had happened and there'd be a delay waiting to see the doctor. And I would just lose my mind over these little things that were so insignificant. And you just, when you realize that, you think, I'm fine. You're telling yourself all day, but then something tiny will happen and you are completely dysregulated.
Yeah.
And that isn't the way that we want to live.
Yeah, like our body is not in balance, which I didn't realise. I would have these triggers like a snotty nose because Lily really struggled with her breathing towards the end of her life. So if the kids got a snotty nose in the middle of the night, it would completely take me back, like full PTSD flashbacks. Yeah. But then in the morning, everything would be fine. So I'd be like, oh, well, that's just a thing. And I don't know, but it took a really long time for anyone to say you have PTSD. So I just thought I just had to get on with things.
That's something I would really love for everyone listening to this to really hear because we associate this term PTSD with, as you said, returned war veterans, people who have been victims of assault or in a car accident, natural disaster, whatever it is. But trauma isn't the things that happen to us. It is our body's response to something that they couldn't process.
Yes, and as simple as hearing someone blow their nose or kids with a chesty cough. Like we could talk about this for ages, but it's kind of why I don't like trigger warnings because
we don't do trigger
no one's going to trigger warn a snotty nose, but like that's my trigger. So so everyone's trigger is so unique that we can't make these mass assumptions. I love speaking about baby loss. That's not my trigger. I can talk about babies that have died because it's not my trigger. Actually, hearing about healthy babies and happy families used to be really, really hard for me, which I think a lot of people can relate to. Yeah. But nobody's ever doing a trigger warning for like the happy family scenario. So it is triggers, post-traumatic stress disorder. You can have it from an ultrasound. Like how many people? And there is now like a body of research being collated around ultrasound trauma, but for a long time it wasn't recognised. And even just going back to like the hospital car park of where you may have had a failed IVF transfer or a bad news in an ultrasound can spiral people, but it's not recognised as.
Going back to the scene over and over again.
Yeah.
So you went to the psychologists and you did the quote-unquote work.
All the work, yeah.
All the work. But it didn't help you on a deeper level.
So I had this voice. So I did all the work. I had the public profile. I talked about grief and I shattered, the barriers and we talked about the rawness of it and we did fundraisers and I was healed. But deep inside I had a voice that was with me every single minute of every single day. And the voice, and I analysed the voice with my psychologist, it was a very immature voice, but it's like, it's your fault. You killed her. You should have saved her. You could have done more. It's all your fault. And it was like, I knew it was irrational, but I lived with it, and it was all-consuming. And it was just something that I had to bat away constantly, and I could speak rationally and say, like, I know it's not my fault and all of this stuff, but, like, the inside voice was, but it is. You should get arrested. It's your fault. And living with the weight of that, it was like this blackness inside of me, this heaviness that, like, I couldn't, it was part of me until I went to a science festival.
Not where we thought this story was going.
Do you want to hear about the science festival?
Of course we do.
I attended an event. We were living in Tasmania after kind of doing a lot of moving around during COVID with a dear friend of mine a couple of really good friends who had said, there's this event, it's on the east coast of Tasmania, let's make a girls' trip and we'll go. And one of my friends was kind of working in a similar area to the science festival at the time, and so she had said, I need to go to this event, will some of you come? And so I paid no attention to what I was doing, just was like, yep, sure, I'll come, brunch. Maybe there's some sort of breath work, yoga, whatever, cold plunge, looking forward to the brunch. And we got there and we had to lie down, and this guy started talking about what might happen in this breath work. And I really thought, gosh, he's really going on a bit. Like, we're going to do a bit of box breathing and have a cold plunge. Like, what is he talking about? And he was talking about the experiences that your body might feel, that your hands might start to tingle, that your face could tingle, that you could get pins and needles, that you might experience claw hands, that you could feel pinned to the mat, that you might want to move around. It's like, come on, mate. Like, let's just do the box breathing and get to the cold plunge. And then
Give me my brunch.
like, literally, I was like, all right. And then he started talking about rewiring neural pathways. And he said, you know, it could be, he gave this analogy of a bushwalk. And so he was like, if you go on the same path of this bushwalk, like if you do a bushwalk on the same path every single day, you'll only ever really see the same things. And he was like, what this can do to your neural pathways is you're still going on the same bushwalk, but you're seeing it from a different perspective. So you might be going in the same general area, but maybe you're walking alongside. So instead of being on that track and seeing that rock from that angle, you're seeing it from this angle. And that's what this can do to things that you're thinking about. And again, I was like, I don't know what this guy's on about, but he then asked us to think of an intention. And so what immediately came to me was the guilt, the voice. And I was like, all right, like that can be my intention, to try to work on this horrible voice that I know isn't rational or real. And maybe we can shift that. But I still thought, like, it was a bit ridiculous.
Can we have
brunch? Yes. And so we lay down and we began, and I remember thinking I'll take it seriously to see what this is about, but I had no idea what was in store for me. And my body started to have the sensations that he'd spoken about, and my hands started to do this claw thing. And then one side of my body became completely paralyzed to the mat. And I did get a little bit alarmed. And so I was like, something's happening. What's happening? And he came over and his face was like, whoa, this person's going deep. But he was like, you're safe, you're okay. Like, keep breathing, slow it down a bit. And sort of did some, what I now realize is like the touch that you can do on the arm. And then as it kept going, I had this release, and it was like a euphoric kind of release. And I felt this physical release all over my body of all sorts of things. Like there was so much. I can't say like each thing was attributed to a specific emotion or whatever. It was a whole body experience. And then I felt what I now know can be like a DMT release in your brain. So I then felt kind of high. Like I was lying there like, oh my God, what is happening? And also this feels really good now. And I was kind of in meditation for quite a while, but it all just felt like it happened in an instant. And then it finished and I was like, oh, wow, has it been an hour? Also, what happened? And every one of the girls that had come with me had this insane experience. And we went and did the cold plunge in the ocean of Tasmania in winter. And there's a photo of us, and I look like I've been like fast asleep for days and hit by a bus. I'm like, oh, it's like no idea what had happened. And we went and had brunch, and we were all just like, oh, what happened? Like, what happened? And a few days later, I went and met with him, and I was like, what happened to me? Like, what was this? And that's when I started to learn about transformative breath work and conscious connected breath, and how powerful it can be. And it set in course kind of this next few years of events. But importantly, I didn't realize it at the time. And I don't know if it was like a week or two later that I woke up. And I was like, what is different? And then I realized the voice was gone. The voice that had plagued me for years was no longer there. And sometimes it comes back, but it's like he said, I hear it from a different angle and I know it's not real anymore. So like might try, it's not as intense, it's not as scary, it's not as real. It's just like a lighter version of it that will probably always be a part of me, but it doesn't rule me anymore. And that is why I can sit here and talk to you about my whole experience without breaking down, because it changed my life.
I have chills hearing that story. And I think that everyone who comes to this practice and has an extreme first experience, as you did, as I did, really got to a point where they thought, I need to learn more about this.
Yes.
And again, back to the type A in both of us, we're like, tell me everything. I want to learn everything.
Yeah, like what just happened?
That's it. And I loved reading about the science behind breathwork, because there's a little bit of research that's starting to show us how it impacts the body. And I loved seeing some of the studies where brain scans were done of people who were doing transformative breathwork, and they compared those brain scans to people who were taking psychedelic drugs.
Yes.
And the same areas of the brain actually light up
Yes.
when you are doing breathwork to when you're taking, psilocybin
Yes.
or MDMA. And I found that fascinating, and we can't actually explain exactly how it all happens. And I think that's, the whole premise of my podcast is, blending the science with the spiritual.
Yep.
And I think there's so much science behind breathwork, which is amazing.
Yes.
And that's very helpful. But when you get to that point, you can't explain some of these experiences. That is the thing that changed everything for me.
Yeah.
No amount of therapy, no amount of, walks in nature or...
And quickly, right? Like
Quickly.
That's what I couldn't get over. And I've been doing it a lot for many years now. So that was 3 years ago. But each time that I have a really intense one, it's not just in the moment. Yeah. It's that it might be 6 weeks later. You go,
you realise
the snotty nose doesn't trigger me. It's not a trauma trigger anymore. And I had a really deep experience more recently back in Sydney when I was doing my facilitated training with Lindsay, where I was actually able to go back to into a memory, which obviously you would only do under a very safely held condition. But I was actually able to go into that memory where we were initially given Lily's diagnosis. And that is the moment that I flipped into fight mode. So I went, instead of screaming, instead of letting out this cry of grief, I went straight into, who do we need to see? Who's the best doctor? How can we fix it? My body went, and that was sort of the beginning of me going into a disassociated state. And in this recent breathwork experience, I was able to go back and complete this kind of it wasn't like a screamy cry, it wasn't scary. It sounds weird, I know, but I was able to kind of just let out this it completed it and give myself all this love and compassion, and come back out of it and be like, that kind of completed the cycle, which again, we can't explain how that happens or what that means, but it also probably means that my ability to go into a hypervigilant mode and to be in a heightened state, because I've gone back to the start of when it first began. I've kind of collapsed a lot of those timelines, so it doesn't happen as much anymore. And that's the bit where you're it's scientific, but there is more. There's a lot more there that they are studying. Still don't have the research to show why it happens, but we know through so many people's anecdotal evidence that this works. And I love it because, as you said, it is inducing a similar state to some of the drug therapy treatment trials that they're doing for PTSD, the MDMA and psilocybin. But this is like a completely natural way. And for people who've been through what many of your listeners have been through and who have been through loss, being able to stay in control is really powerful. And with breath, you are always empowered. So I love that. It's very trauma empathetic, if that makes sense, because you can always stop and return your breath to normal.
Absolutely. There are two things I think that transformative breathwork has over these transcendental drug-induced states. And the first is that you can stop whenever you want. You know, it's not like if you have a bad experience where you've got to wait until the drug kind of wears off.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that these experiences that you have, you get to own them.
Yeah.
You don't look back and say, oh, it was the hallucinogenic drug that helped me.
Yes.
You get to go, this was me. This was me breathing.
Literally just breathing. We all do it every single day. Yeah.
And how incredibly empowering that is for someone to say, I was able to heal myself.
Yeah.
That's what I absolutely love about these practices and why I include them in all my programs and cannot speak more highly about it. So
yeah,
I find that it took me we both have the same breathwork practitioner that we learned from, that we did our training through, and she is absolutely incredible. It was a while, I had started breathwork well before I found Lindsay, and I think it took me a few goes of kind of hearing how it all works from different people to kind of really understand it. So I think for anyone who's listening to this, they've heard me speak about it a whole bunch of times, but sometimes when someone else explains it, it makes more sense to them. So I would love to hear from you how you think these practices help resolve trauma within the body.
Big question. And I think what I have really learned, so obviously there's the technique. So we've got this, it's not a normal breath. It's not the kind of breath that we would be telling people to go around to do in their day-to-day life. But when we're doing this conscious connected breath, it's a circular breath. It has the ability to put your thinking brain offline. And when you have that thinking brain offline, many of the things that in your day-to-day you're suppressing in your subconscious can actually be free to come out. And so this can be used like not just for trauma or treating grief or emotional release, but also for creatives. You know, people have found the ending to the book that they have had writer's block about for years, and it's come out and it was in there all along because we have it. So we are allowing our body to the freedom and the space to safely let these things out that we've been pushing down. I don't want to think about that. I can't deal with that. I'm going to push it down. But unlike talk therapy where you really need to process and talk with the breath, you allow it to kind of come out and we don't talk about it and we let it out. The body processes it and it comes out. And I think that connection between the mind and the body and finally creating a safe space for what it's been holding is where the magic happens. And we all know, like, when you're stressed, we hold ourselves like this. Like, we feel it in our body and your breathing starts to become shallow. You might, like, you know, your tummy starts to tighten. You can't eat or you want to eat. Like, it just depends. We have a physical response to it. But for some reason, medically, therapeutically, for a long time, we've tried to disconnect the body and the brain. But once you start to put it all together, it makes sense. You're like, okay, we have this body that is holding everything and we're ignoring it. And what I have kind of learnt, particularly with people who have been through loss, baby loss, pregnancy loss, grief, birth trauma, that before we can really get to the deep work, we need to create a space of safety. So what I'm doing with many of my mamas in my community is I have like an online program that I take them through and we spend a couple of weeks really just getting safety back into the body. So it's about gentle practices to feel back in your body, becoming aware of your body, starting to feel safe with a deeper breath, even just noticing where you are, so that when you come to do the transformative breath work, you're able to get the most out of it because you're not holding back. Because a lot of people come to it and they're like too afraid to let go because they're afraid of what might come out. So we need to create a safe space before we go there, so that people can then be like, okay, I'm safe. I know what's going to happen and I'm going to open it. And the idea of giving up control is scary. But when you do it in the breath, it's not scary at all. So it's just about letting that brain let that go. And when you do it in the breath, the way that it comes out, like I said before, it's not like I came out and had to re-traumatize myself. It just came out in this overwhelming release.
That's the thing that I really want people to hear, that it is not about reliving a certain memory and coming out of this experience being re-traumatized.
No.
And that is why it's incredibly important to work with someone who is very trauma-informed and trauma-trained, because we know how to approach that experience in a way that feels really, really safe. But I always say to people, if something comes up within your body, our thinking brain comes back on and we're like, oh, okay, what is that related to? That's because of this and it's from this particular memory. Like I've had experiences where I have hysterically laughed for like 2 hours straight, and other times I have been sobbing and inconsolably upset.
Yeah.
But neither, they're very extreme and there's a million things in between, but it never feels unsafe, and it's not like you need to say, I'm laughing because I've remembered this, or I'm crying
it feels good when you laugh though, doesn't it? You're like, this feels good, but the crying also feels good.
But that feels good too.
Yeah. And it is about safety, I think, which is why I decided, and like why you probably decided as well, to train and study in this field, because I knew that for my community, most people have, really lost a baby at some stage of their fertility, pregnancy, childhood at some point in their journey, that big things can come up and we need to put safety around it, and we need to do it in a trauma-informed way so that we can hold people safely. And as you said, like not allow it to kind of become out of control, or that you just get pushed out on the street after you've done your little breathwork course and you're like having a big experience. We need to give people time to process and to navigate that integration process afterwards.
Oh my goodness, I love this conversation so much. I have a couple more things that I want to ask you about, and that's sort of like the next little step. Like, if someone is recognizing themselves in a lot of these things that we're speaking about today, and they think, well, I don't know where to go and find a breathwork practitioner. I'd rather do it in person. Like if doing it with someone is important to that person, like what's the first step that they should take?
I guess it's researching and finding out about it, because there's lots of different breathwork out there, and there are a lot of breathwork studios. So if you're wanting to do it, I think for emotional release, trauma, that kind of thing, you really want to know that the person that you're doing it with is going to hold that. There's a lot of amazing people doing breathwork, but it's like peak performance, sports enhancement.
Very different.
Very, very different. And whilst you may have a deep experience, you won't be necessarily, it's not, the parameters around that aren't for trauma and emotional release. I offer online for people, and if they're in Victoria, in Melbourne, 1-to-1 in person. And so I think what you're looking for is, what does trauma-informed actually mean? Because a lot of people are throwing that term around.
True.
What is safety, and how does that person approach the idea that emotions and things can come up? And if you're looking at booking a class down the road, like have a look at how long they're giving you in that session, because if it's another class starting immediately after that one, it can feel really weird to have this huge experience and then just like
off you go,
walk out on the street. And it's not good, because the integration process is important. So you want enough time afterwards. When we say integration, we want people to be able to lie there in meditation and process what's happened. We want them to share if sharing feels good, or be part of a sharing circle with other people, share. And then be supported in the weeks afterwards when all that, everything's
Stuff
moving, and when the big downloads can happen. Like I said, it wasn't till a couple of weeks after that I realised the voice was gone. Wow. So I think it's about looking for the safety and also making sure that it feels like the right fit for you.
Yeah. And what do you give people then? You've done these beautiful experiences with them, and they go back and start, living their life again, and things. This is not like a one and done situation, sadly.
No.
Kind of it'd be great if it was. If we had a magic wand, I'm sure we'd be happy to wave it. But things are going to come up. And so what do you tell people to do, like in the moment when things come up? Are there little practices or things that people can do when they are right back then?
In the course that I recently launched, we spend a week on resetting in the moment. So we talk about like what are the things that like recognizing our triggers and what are the somatic practices you can do in the moment. So it might be like a 60-second nervous system reset that's like 30 seconds of breath and 30 seconds of meditation. It's sort of, you can do it anywhere. Like you could just duck into the bathroom at work and do it. We talk about really basic somatic things like orienting when you're orientating,
Grounding.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like just feeling like that can be a really grounding thing to do. And then really simple breath that you could do. Say you were spiraling in a meeting. We talk about just doing like a longer exhale. So you might just do 2 in and 4 out, and nobody else will notice that you're doing it, but you'll instantly feel calmer. So it's as simple, like I could sit here and talk to you and do it just without anyone noticing, or just, looking around the room and feeling safe by like identifying something. That picture is on the wall. It is safe. My hands are here. They can press on the chair. I am safe. Just to bring you out of it. And as you said, it's not a one and done. So you might do a big transformational, but then we might give you some functional breathing, some daily techniques to take away with you that you can do every day. That might be around poor sleep or feeling more energized in the morning, and like simple pranayama practices and things like that you can keep doing to really start to improve. And I have found that I will do, you do many of these over the years. So you might do your functional daily techniques, but then it might be every 4 months you feel ready, or it might be every 6 months, or it could be 8 weeks. What you do need to give yourself enough time for the integration. But each time I do one, like something shifts or another layer shifts. Like I said, that really insane experience recently of going into a memory, which you would not do in the beginning stages of breath work, but I was ready and it was a safe space. I didn't think that was something that I would ever get to experience, but each time there's something there. The laughter is probably they're probably the best ones, I think. I love when you get the giggles. I'm not sure why I'm laughing, but it feels so good.
My goodness, it's been 9 years since Lily was born. What has surprised you most since then on this whole journey, looking back now? Did you ever think you would get to this point where you'd be sitting here like having a laugh in a conversation at the same time talking about your daughter who had died?
No. And I think what has surprised me, I never expected that I would be, I'm a lawyer. I work in
corporate law,
cyber security, privacy.
So good.
And so I never thought that even after I did that experience, I was like, I'm not going to be a breath work. Like, I'm not going to be the one that does it. I'll tell you where to go, until the call became, and I think this is what happens when you start working with your subconscious, and it's like, okay, it's inevitable. Here we are. We're doing it. So I guess the journey, there's nothing that will ever make it okay that Lily died. And of course, if I could go back and change it, I would. But I'm also so grateful for my life now. It's not okay that we lost her, but I am still a better person, a much better person than the yummy mummy that wanted to, and I am a kinder person. I'm more grateful for everything that I have in my life. And I know what it is to experience the lowest of the low. And I think that means you can also appreciate love, happiness, and joy on a different level. And that has only been possible through the healing power of breathwork. Because remember, I said about being frozen at the start and not being able to really laugh or smile, or
we don't want to survive. We want to thrive.
I didn't think that was possible.
Oh my goodness. What would you say to anyone who is listening to this, who is just in that place of feeling completely stuck, where they don't think they're ever going to get their life back? They're never going to be able to move on.
I want to say it without sounding like toxic positivity, because I know that when you're in that deep trench, hearing me with my happy, smiley 9 years on, it's hard. I
don't think anyone would think that for someone who lost a baby at 10 months of age.
But
never.
I guess what I would say is, like, I've been in that trench, and there are lots of things that can change. It can be, of course, my modality might not be right for everyone, but there will be something that will work for you that you do have to dwell in that grief, in that trauma for a bit. But if you can tap into that element of the body, if you haven't already, I think that's something to explore, because it will support you in that darkness and it will help you start to climb back out. And it goes right there with all the healing stuff we thought was the right stuff to do. Look at how you can support your body, whether it is breath work, somatic healing, other sorts of processes that work with your subconscious, EMDR. Like, there's so much stuff out there, tapping, all of the things now. If you haven't incorporated that and you're in that darkness, think about your body and how you can support it.
That is such good advice. And it is not advice we hear from our doctors or from their friends and family, unless they've been through a similar healing journey. But it is that ability to process what you've been through within your body.
Yeah.
I think changes everything.
Yeah. And it's sort of, you don't think about it until you
don't
suddenly, like, what does it even mean? You're probably listening going, what does it even mean to be in your body? Of course I'm in my body.
Yeah.
But then suddenly you're back in your body and you're like, oh,
this feels different.
I'm actually here. I'm not behind a glass wall or a thick wall of ice anymore.
How can people find out more about you or start to work with you? I think there's so many people listening to this, they're going to be like, sign me up.
Well, Insta. So I'm the Lilyflower, _Lilyflower, the same, thelilyflower.com.au. And I think if you pop that in, you'll find me. And I have my online course starting again early next year. We're still in around now, but you can book one-to-ones, or we can have a chat and see what would work for you.
Thank you. And we will link up all of those in the show notes as well, so people can just click and find you. So
amazing.
Thank you for sharing your story so openly. Thank you for bringing everything that you do to the world after such an incredibly difficult experience. Look what you've built out of it. So thank you.
And I do think Lily is, we haven't touched on this, but she is there with me through all of this.
Absolutely.
And I feel her in those sessions. Like, I know that she's there every step of the way. So it's a co-creation.
Thank you, Priyanka. Thank you. I'm going to try and close this off without crying, but thank you so much for listening right to the end. And if you have felt as moved by this conversation as I've been, please share it with someone, because you never know who is experiencing loss, who is struggling on their own, and you never know who might benefit from listening to this as well. Next week on the podcast, we're going to be speaking about the fertility identity shift that we go through and who you end up becoming on this journey, which I think flows in so beautifully with everything we've spoken about today. And I want to help you understand how this journey can bring about what is most important in your life. So until then, I am sending you all of my love as you continue your own journey to fertility.
A few days of the year, I open the doors to the In Your Element Fertility Yoga program. This is the most comprehensive mind-body fertility program you will find anywhere. Studies show us that the stress of infertility can be compared to receiving a diagnosis of a terminal illness. And while doctors are there to support your body from a medical perspective, it's not their job to help alleviate and manage your stress levels. So how can you get through the anxiety of trying to conceive in a way that feels calmer and easier? I designed the Element program to help support your fertility in 3 important ways. To help reduce your cortisol levels, helping you regulate your nervous system, to increase circulation and blood flow while releasing physical tension from your body, and to reconnect you back to yourself, to find that sense of peace and knowing that you are capable and in control. On top of this, we run weekly live classes, ongoing workshops with fertility experts such as doctors, nutritionists, and therapists. You'll receive personalized programs and be surrounded by a community of women who get it. This is a month-to-month program, so you can jump in today and decide if it's right for you. Doors are open for just a few days or until places are full, and I can't wait to see you on the inside.